Hey, so hey, so Peyton and I are pairing on this new component that's being added, and we had to make some changes, so much so that we kind of having to rewrite the spec. Um, and so we're just gonna share one way of approaching view unit component unit tests. Um, what's that thing? It says 184.3K gzipped.
That's a little plugin that a VS Code plugin that I use that kind of tells me like packages size. So like I'm conscientious about what I'm importing.
That is so cool. That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, I shall tell you what that is later
Oh, okay.
because I
Um,
I don't know the name of it off the top of
okay. No, you're good.
my head.
So Peyton, I don't mind. Do you mind if I kind of just start ranting about unit testing?
Oh
And
no, yeah. Tell me what to do.
okay.
I'll be the Padawan
So
today.
the first thing um, is the top level describe block, what you put in your name there. It's really, really helpful if this is globally unique throughout a whole test suite, which means if I just throw shared runners in there, that's probably not enough information to make it globally unique. I personally just throw in the import path of the
Mm,
subject under test.
like our spec, we do that a lot there.
Yes, very similarly. So on line two, I usually just copy everything after the tilde and I just throw it in there, and then also like sans the dot view. Um, and yeah, and it's kind of funky because you're like, hey, we're duplicating the path. What if the path changed?
But if you're looking for it,
Yeah, so
you can grab
it's
it.
I don't know. Um, okay, great. And then we got to do our whole like let wrapper boilerplate, which there's actually a cool RFC for addressing this boilerplate. Oh no, we got some
What?
weird.
Not top level before each?
What'd you say?
No, you said oh no.
On line three, we started getting some weird like
I wasn't even
import stuff.
looking.
No, you're good.
I thought you were already saying let's not do a top level.
No, yeah. Well, we may not need the top level before each. We will need the after each. So, what I do usually do, whenever I'm going to create a shared variable like that that's leaded, um, I think about cleaning it up first. And so we're going to have to always do wrapper.destroy and then wrapper. And then even more paranoid is doing wrapper equal null afterwards. Yeah. And I think you'd want to flip them too.
Yeah.
Um, yep. Great. Awesome.
All right.
So
So
then,
we want to
yep.
do our create component.
Yep. Let's do it. Yeah. And it's important to like highlight too while we're here that so this is a helper function that helps us just create the subject under test. And I use that terminology um, intentionally because this kind of pattern doesn't just apply just to view components, but also with any kind of thing we were testing um, where we need to manage the life cycle of it. Encapsulating how we stand up that subject is really helpful. So yeah, we'll run shallow mount because this is a fairly straightforward component. We don't need a full mount. We're going to set the value of shallow mount to wrapper. So wrapper equals shallow mount.
In the before each.
On line 8,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
And then call create component in the before each, most likely.
Not yet.
Not yet, unless we need to.
And so then let's just give it some default props. So I guess we're going to do props data and
Yeah. I do not remember them all.
yeah, let's copy them over.
We'll just copy them all and delete. You want to do that?
That
Or
makes sense to me. Yeah.
okay. Bah, bah, bah. see if we can do that again anywhere. No. Do we know our values we want to do first?
So let's give them all some default values. So for update path, it's a string, and let's give it.
Was that a string? Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I usually put like some test constants. I put those outside the describe usually. So like outside the describe, I'll do something like const test under big caps test underscore update path. And so anywhere else in my test where I'm wanting to reference this path, I don't reference it by the magic string. I just reference that thing. Yeah. And so then init enabled, let's just have it be true by default.
Yeah.
Then allow override. Yep. Yep.
Allow override. I'm trying to remember the context here. This is probably going to be false.
I would say by default, let's enable it to true, because having it be false where everything's disabled and that's the, looking ahead, that's going to be kind of the edgy case. So we don't have to put these props here. We could like be very explicit about them in our different cases, but we can refactor that later. So I'd get rid of the before each.
Yeah.
Cool. Sounds great.
And you mean we could handle that later by like allowing the function to accept a prop type deal?
Yes, 100% like that. Yep. So what I then do, there's two different ways to approach organizing the spec, and I found one way to be significantly more helpful than another way.
Okay.
If you go to our component, if you go to the template, and I usually start testing a spec by looking at the template, one might be tempted to say, oh, I want to describe this first toggle. And so you think about, okay, I'm going to create a whole section of specs around just what is the behavior of this toggle. That's
typically how I do it.
Right. So that's kind of, I would say you're slicing it based on the behavior. Another way of slicing it is slicing it based on the state of the component. So the way I normally approach it, and I found this to be a lot helpful because that's usually the hardest part, is setting up the component and to be under these different conditions.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I test behavior with its, but with describe blocks, I group common setup of component. Mm-hmm. So what we'll end up having, if you go back to our underscore spec, I'll usually do this. I usually do describe with default. And this is like, given our default setup, these are all the behaviors I would expect here. And then I'm going to have another describe. We'll do one like describe with parent allow override false. Like, what do I expect for there? And I think those are the only contexts that we'll really have. We'll do some user interaction because I know knowing this component, I think there's some of that user interaction that we'll want to capture, or we could do like describe with enabled as false or something. But that's usually how I slice my specs. It's not necessarily by feature, but on state.
What about invoking create component? Is that something you typically like to do within an it block or like one of these describe groups?
Yeah, so I'll do it with one of these describe groups. The one thing you want to watch out for is that, and in all cases, this isn't going to be a problem, but it can be a problem. The one thing you want to watch out for is that you don't create a component twice in the same spec.
I've done it before.
If you're feeling really paranoid, a way to do that is in our create component. I could do if wrapper throw in here. And sometimes I'll do that. All of this boilerplate, we have an RFC for encapsulating all the boilerplate, but since we don't have that yet, it just depends on how picky you want to be about it. I tend to lean towards being really picky about it because I just am generally paranoid, but I wouldn't worry about it. So after, I would just for right now on line 25 underneath it, I would just do the before each and the create component stuff.
And it
Yeah.
seems like if we're going to have this, we might as well, I guess we'll do it with the defaults, but then we'll need to refactor here in a bit if we want to change some props.
Yep. Yeah, you're 100% correct. Yeah, we'll need to do that. So then I look at the template and be like, okay, what's all the things I want to
With the defaults.
I want to double check with my template. And one is, so it looks like we have a loading icon, and that's not going to show up by default unless we're actually doing something. So I do want to probably now create a finder for the loading icon.
All right, and we'll probably need to import that.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That looks 100% right.
Okay.
And
then we'll make, do you do your helpers within the describe or outside?
I use them, I do them right after my create, because it's just really helpful for these helpers to have access to that shared variable. It just makes it a lot easier to read. I'm not a huge fan of non-pure functions, but for these test helpers, it's like, I found this to be the most easiest to maintain and read is when everyone has access to that shared wrapper. And it's kind of very similar to like our spec, where everything has access to the subject. And it makes that's why some of our spec unit tests can be really readable. Anyways, yeah, so that's where I put my finder there. We want to just make sure it doesn't exist at first because we're not loading anything.
So we'll say something like loading icon does not exist.
Works for me. Yeah.
Then we will just check expect. Whoa, why does this keep happening? Find loading icon. Is there an exist on this?
There is you would do find loading icon dot exists.
Ah.
Yeah.
Function or just a property?
It's a function. Yep.
To be false?
To be false. Yeah.
Also, when you are doing this, do you typically do you just write your spec all like this and then test, or do you have it running?
No, I usually have it running. I usually do the watch running thing. You have that on you have your terminal on a different window?
I do. You mean bring it over so we can see?
It's up to you.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. Do you like using the integrated terminal?
I don't. Just because
Okay.
since I've been coding, I've always had a separate terminal, and it just feels natural to me, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's totally makes sense. Oh man, it is running.
Yeah, we got a problem somewhere. Cannot read property. It's probably this describe block.
It is 100% that describe block.
Estimated 15 seconds. Hold
that
up.
Sounds like
received true.
Okay. Why would the loading be true? Where is his loading?
vShow is loading.
I thought it would be false.
Set to false. Do you have to? No, you don't have to say that it is false by default, right? You don't have to make the.
Oh, but wait, we have vShow. It's not vIf, so it is always going to exist.
Ah, it's true. It's always in the DOM, right?
Yep. So I would then do this.
Change it to vIf.
Because I think what we would then want to check is like, does it have like display none? Like that's going to be the thing. So what we can do is go back to the shared runners form spec.
But my thing is, do we need it as vShow for the UI? I don't think we do we?
We might. The reason I had it as vShow.
Oh, you did this. Okay, this was.
Yeah, I did, and I'm not entirely sure if we need it or not. But the reason why is because you see the parent has the text, and it has a line item center. If we were, my fear was if we are like inserting it, are we gonna like make
Mess up, break the UI,
yeah.
right? Based on the element still being there.
Yeah, so that's why I was just like, okay, let's just toggle the visibility of it, not necessarily make everything.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah, no, in that case, cool.
So
So we're gonna check for classes.
that makes sense. Well, I don't think it needs to be a class. I think it's actually style. So I think what we want to do is you can actually go to find loading icon. I feel like you can do find loading icon dot elements. I think we actually have a matcher for this. I think you can do find loading icon element, and then we can check if expect to be visible. I think we have a matcher for that. So instead of false, and is that, and instead of calling it, yeah, it's just like that. But we're gonna check if it's not to be visible.
So is that dot not, or is this just not?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just like that.
Okay.
Cool. Great. So then going back, so there's our loading icon, and then we have our first toggle here. Great.
I mean, I don't. So like with this toggle, like testing wise, like, I mean, we're going to be getting down into the nitty gritty if we say like we want to make sure that this toggle is. Well, I guess we could always check the UI. I was thinking about like checking the VM. We of course don't want to do that to check if this value is set to true by default. So is there? I wonder if there is this kind of way your mind's thinking going through this. Like, should we check to see? Like, I don't know with the toggles. Is there a state we can check here?
If it's
Toggled on, toggled off. I'm sure there's some type of.
well, so since we're shallow mounting, we're not super concerned about some of the inner functionality of the toggle button, which is really nice because some of that isn't going to be really easy to reinvent. So I think all we need to really do is just look for GL toggle components, and we could do like a filter on the label. So we're looking by the label of like, I want to see, hey, is my enabled one, what's the value of it? And I want to make sure it's not disabled and other things. And we can do all of that kind of in one fell swoop. So I think we need another finder for, I think let's do one find enabled toggle. Yeah. And what I'm kind of envisioning, because I know we have another toggle, it would be cool to have one find toggle that takes in the label. So we would have both. We'd have both a find enabled toggle, which actually calls find toggle with that specific label that we're wanting to do it. But let's just do it all here and we'll abstract later if you're cool with that. So we want to, import GL toggle, I guess. Yep.
So we have two. Do we want to find all here or not?
I would say we want to find the one based on the label. So I would say wrapper.find all GL toggle.
I'll give us two.
Yep, and then we're gonna get dot wrappers after that call, and then we're gonna call dot find. That gives us an array of the view test util wrappers, and then we're gonna find a specific one based on the label we passed to it. So then I think
doing a prop.
Yeah, so then we're gonna do, and I like to just use X, so I would just do X, an arrow function with X in it. Let's not take, we don't have to take any arguments yet. In the, we can get rid of that one. I would suggest in the find doing inside the find, doing X and then arrow.
Oh, we're passing a function in here?
Oh yeah, we're passing a function in there.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then X dot props. And then label, so parentheses, then like call props. Props is a function. And then label
I got you. Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
we'll say if that equals whatever. And this is the argument I would expect kind of for this, actually, for this whole line 22. Because right now we're just looking for the enabled toggle, but this whole block, it would be really nice if we did the same thing for the other toggle. So I would say, yeah, let's go ahead and rename find enabled toggle to just find toggle.
Okay, let me wrap my mind around this real quick. So we're finding an array of components, and then what does wrappers do? This is new to me.
Wrappers gives us that actual array of components. Before it gives us a box around the array of components. And so this unboxes that, so we get the actual array. And then
okay, so now we have the array. So now we're back into JavaScript land where we're calling the find function on the array to find.
And then we want to find it where props label, and we're going to actually get an argument here. So on line 22, at the beginning of the whole finder helper here, inside that empty parentheses, inside the
we're gonna pass in what label we're looking for.
Yep.
And then we want to catch it here.
Yep. You are.
Okay, I'm following now. This is interesting. I didn't know this was possible.
Yeah, and so then I would say, okay, then because it's so nice when our tests are super readable. So then what I would say is, let's add another finder called find enabled toggle. And that just calls find toggle with the label. You know what I mean?
I do. Need and equals.
Empty parentheses arrow is, I think, the.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
We gotta actually call the function.
Yep. Yeah, we can just copy it from our component.
What was that? So we want to actually find this entire string.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very much the same thing for the other one as well, but let's double check that this works. And so we have the loading icon does not exist, but I would expect the enabled toggle.
So enabled toggle exists.
Yep. Yeah. So I would do find enabled toggle dot exists.
To be true.
Yeah. And there's some weird nuances with the way we did the wrappers in the dot find. Like technically, if it didn't exist, we would have find enabled toggle would return null because we're doing an array find. But yeah, those are kind of nuances that we can choose to care about, but maybe we don't need to super care about. Let's see if it works. Did it work?
Yes. Yes, it did.
Oh, nice. Oh man, first try.
Yeah. I'm still thinking here, just about that. So like we're pretty much, since we have multiple toggles, we're having a helper function that can find multiple ones.
Yeah, because what's our next expectation going to be?
Because you typically do this. In the past, I've done it a little differently, where that find toggle function may have a label and then do wrapper find all, but then like I still might call that function, but do like a dot at 0, but it's not, as readable.
Yeah. And so doing that kind of like index selecting is, that's fine.
Magic numbers really, with 0 or 1.
Yeah. And it can really mess things up if, let's say, so we know that second toggle is actually sometimes doesn't exist.
Right.
Let's say the first toggle sometimes didn't exist. That can really mess things up if I'm just trying to say, hey, at 0. Because sometimes that means one thing and another time it means a different thing. So having a semantic selection is ideal. and like our semantic way of selecting things that's, you know, at least do this is to use like test IDs, like do data dash test ID or something. But to make it even more powerful, doing stuff based on labels is on what the user actually sees.
Right.
That's really neat.
Yeah, and we can do that by checking the actual toggles props. So that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Okay.
I like doing it like that. There's other ways of there's a whole RFC too about um, selecting things based on text versus IDs,
Yeah.
and using testing the testing library package. Um, but I don't think that plays with view test utils. I think that's just DOM selection, which is, since we're messing with the toggle and that has a lot of implementation details with it, I would rather not I think that kind of requires that we full mount this. And for this specifically, I don't see a whole lot of benefit with us full mounting this.
This is interesting because you're taking a more simple approach, like, to testing this component than like I would have unless you were on this call with me.
Well, no, I'm and I appreciate you letting me take this time to just record us going through this from scratch, because
I'm picking up some things
cool.
good here. Because I was already thinking click actions like when I first saw this. I wasn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I start out and oh yeah, like I try to start out as simple as possible, and then because if I do just think of click actions, I think of the behavior, and I start trying to describe based on the behavior, I may miss like the natural organization of some of just the very simple parts, and then okay, let's do the more hard to test places and see where they best fit. But yeah, let's keep going. You may find out, and that's not to say like this approach is the only approach to do testing. This is just what I found really helpful to where I don't really think twice now about doing unit tests. It's very this pattern has been working really well for me personally.
That's good, because I still think about my unit test. I'd like to get there.
yeah. So this pattern might help too. So then the next thing is this toggle, and so let's create a finder for this second toggle. And
we want to make sure it doesn't exist, right?
Right, because we said our default had it init able to true. This one would not exist. So I would call it find override toggle, because that's
because it's not always hidden.
Yep. Awesome.
I guess the only thing I personally don't like here is having to throw in the long prop strings,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I guess like what we could do really is maybe put the labels up here. It might be a little cleaner actually in the spec.
That's a great point. We could even move the labels up to the constants, and now we're both referencing the same labels, like both the production code and the test. Like I don't even have to duplicate these. That's one approach. We could use test IDs if we felt like that was more helpful. Since this is just a one-liner function, like on 25 and 24, I think it's kind of it's still kind of fine. But
I think it's okay. It's just personal preference for sure.
So we expect the override toggle to not exist.
I feel like override super hard to spell.
It is, yep.
Override does not exist. And we're just gonna do a simple check to say expect find override toggle.
Yeah, now this is the caveat with doing the dot wrappers approach, because the result is the result of calling array.find. And that doesn't work. It doesn't.
So we're not going to be able to call a view test utils. Okay, I see.
Yeah, it doesn't give us an empty wrapper. It gives us a null. So we would expect this to be null. If we don't like that, what we could do is change our find toggle to actually return like an empty wrapper. Like we could do, wrappers up find or an empty wrapper. So but that's kind of over engineering a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah, if I was to go back up and like relook at the implementation and then go back down, I think I could, parse it. Oh, I am expecting null. I'm in the habit of always, using future.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Save it. Let's see. Nope. Undefined. Is that what it returns?
I guess that's what array.prototype.find returns. Let me double check. MDN. I thought it returned null. Array find. Return value otherwise undefined is returned. Yep, it's undefined. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I steered you wrong. And there's actually a whole matcher called to be undefined that we
I thought so.
Yeah.
And then we can just get rid of that null. If I can spell it right, let's see.
Nice. Cool. Cool. Awesome.
That looks like, let's go back real quick, check the template. We don't really care about display text, correct?
I wouldn't worry about it. And if we really cared about it, I would say, like, let's just do one snapshot of it in addition to all of this. But at that point, I think we don't.
Yeah. So I don't really think these data test IDs, unless they're used in some R specs, are needed.
That's a really good point. I think they are not needed. We could do a project-wide search for the description span thing.
Yeah, let's do that real quick. Description. Yep.
Let's get rid of it. Sweet. Awesome.
Point. And that seems like we've tested our defaults. Now, like.
Yeah, so now let's walk through someone clicks on the enabled thing.
Okay.
So I would then, because thinking ahead, I know I'm gonna have to test clicking on the other toggle as well. I would now create a helper called change toggle.
Change toggle state or just change toggle?
I personally like to be really terse, so I prefer having not a lot of words. But whatever floats your boat, man. But it'll take in a toggle, or it'll take in a which is actually a view test utils wrapper. I think we're gonna have to do, so going back to the component, I think it's gonna be change. I think that's what we're gonna need to emit.
Because that's an input.
Yeah, and I think we can't necessarily do trigger, because trigger triggers the native DOM event when we actually just need to do vm.emit. We need to trigger the view thing. Yeah, and so then we're gonna do change, and then I think we say what value we want it to be too, and so I guess
for the second parameter.
Yeah, let's just say let's get the value from toggle as well. Let's do not toggle.props value. So we can do not toggle.props and then parentheses value. Yeah. Yeah.
You've got a good memory to remember. I have to look at the docs every time.
Yeah, it'd be something like that. So what we're gonna now do is with the default, but now we have a whole new context of, okay, we've done we've mounted everything as a default, and I would actually put this inside the default one, We could
Okay.
do it. We could do it outside, and I think it actually makes a lot of sense too, because that I like keeping things flatter than more and more nested. So that's a good call. So I would call this, yeah. Oh, sorry, my wife's phone is ringing. Just a sec.
Oh, you're fine. Call is.
Yeah, and so I'd call this with toggle change or with enable toggle change. Um,
With enabled, I'm thinking, yeah.
okay. Yeah.
And this
Yep.
is the part where like I'm thinking, is this normal to do this or not at the top level? Like you do it once? Like are there some side effects there?
Well, it's going to be problematic when we start needing to create it under different props because we would end up creating it twice. So I mean, we have it all encapsulated in one function, so it's not a big deal if we call that function twice. But now what we need to do though is
Probably check with the
in the before each. Let's trigger our new function, the change toggle thing.
really and for each. Okay.
Because that's our new state is when the user does this thing, we're gonna do a new. So this is the new context that can happen.
Okay. So we're probably going to need to pass in find enable toggle.
100%. Yep. I keep saying 100%. I've
Oh,
been
you're
watching.
good.
I've been watching a bit of the Joe Rogan Experience, and that's something he says like all the time.
Oh, really?
I don't
I've
know. If,
been wanting to watch the Post Malone one. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
oh yeah.
You seen it?
I haven't seen it. I saw a little bit of it. Anyways, yeah. We watched a really good one. It was really heavy. It's about some uh, attorneys and business people that worked on the Innocence Project about wrongful convictions. It was really good, but it
I
was.
haven't seen that, but I've been keeping up with like the type of work they've been doing and stuff. Like somebody got put in jail for like a really small drug crime and did like 21 years or
Oh my
something.
gosh!
I
It's
was wow. That's crazy.
these people that are fighting that are it was inspiring, but it was heavy. It was I highly recommend it because just their stories is was really good. It was like a 3+ hour podcast, but the time goes by real fast because it's very very
Yeah,
gripping.
we might have to check that one out for sure.
Okay, with enable toggle change, we now would expect
The override toggle to be seen.
yep, override toggle should exist now.
Yeah.
The
To be.
override, I think we want to do the override toggle.
Oh, I meant to. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So since this is still an array, right? We are going to have what in that array?
You can just say find override toggle dot exists to be true.
Oh, so it's actually going to return the component now.
Yeah.
Oh, we got some mocks going on
Oh
there.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, I'm so glad that this came up. Great. Yep. Because we tried to call it.
Yeah, so we actually triggered an API call here on for each. So now we need to mock it. I would love to hear how you go about like your mocking strategies.
Yeah. Well, let's do it. So let's import mock Axios adapter.
Always forget the name.
It's you had it right. It was big M. We usually call it mock Axios big A adapter from, and then I think it's actually little a Axios dash, Or no, it's not. It's, oh, that is it. Yep, sweet. Okay, great.
VS Code helped me out. If not, I was going to be doing a command shift F in VS Code.
Nice. You have add a pattern on your import name.
Add a pattern. I do.
Yep, sweet. So this is going to be a whole new test resource we need to start managing. So let's declare it.
Let mock. And
let mock. And then this is something I would set up in the top level before each.
Oh,
so
okay.
You notice our subject under test, I'm not eager to set up in a top level before each, because I'm going to want to do that under a number of different contexts. But our collaborators, which are like Axios or our Vuex store or whatever, those I would set up in a top level before each. And I would tweak them before I, like, under different contexts if I needed to. And so that's one pattern I do almost consistently is collaborators I always setting them up in the top level before each. If you couple them to the create component thing, you're gonna 9 times out of 10 it makes tests way more complicated than they need to be. So just setting up the collaborators here and then tweaking them is a lot more simpler of approach, in my opinion. Like, so some people like set up the store and stuff all inside of create component, and in my opinion that makes some of your tests just really hard to manage, because I don't necessarily get to tweak my store before I create my component. Like sometimes that's really, really helpful. It makes things a lot simpler. So
that's a really good point, because I've ran into that before with doing a lot in the create component, especially with UX.
Yeah, so not making sure that create component doesn't do too much. That's just responsible for creating the subject under test. But then collaborators, setting up collaborators, I could do all those individually, but we just create all of them on the top level before each. Yeah, so let's do that for this mock Axios adapter and the before each. So mock equals new mock Axios adapter. Oh, we got to import Axios too.
Forgot.
From tilde. Well, it's got to be our special Axios instance from like lib utils, Axios utils. Yeah, we're not going to make it easy.
Remember all these paths. Is it actually this?
I think it's actually Axios _ utils. No, you're right. You're right all there. It's yeah. And then
passing Axios.
Yep. And then in the after each, we have to do mock.restore. I think it's restore. I'm pretty sure it's restore. Yeah. So then this gives us motivation to actually set up that constant we created earlier, the test update path. Let's just put something bogus here. Let's just do something like /test/update or whatever. Yeah. But now I want to mock the post to that. So in our before each, part of me setting up my collaborators, let's go ahead and do below that line, do something like
in the top level.
Yep, right there, right below line 33. We'll do mock.onPost. Yep, and then pass in our yep. And I guess we want to just return. Let's just always return something successful. So
yeah, it returns like success true or something, or
yeah, we could do like how do we want to do this? Because there's also another interesting effect here. So get this, Peyton. So here's where my mind's thinking. There's another effect going on where we don't want it to respond right away, because if it does that, we're not going to be able to test the loading state.
Yeah, this is true, and that's a very quick loading state.
Right. So it'd be really nice to control when it's going to respond.
Okay.
One way to do that is create a callback here for our post that returns a promise, but saves off the resolve to a shared variable.
Stores the resolve of the mock
of this new promise that we're kind of create on the fly. So here's
and then we invoke that resolve when we want to return it.
Yep. Yeah. So let's go ahead and declare it first. So below mock, we can call it something like, and where we're declaring our shared stuff. And it's a shared variable, so we're gonna actually have to create a let because we're gonna write to it.
Oh, we are. Okay.
And we actually have the lets at the top of our file, kind of. I'm sorry, I'm being
another good call out. That's fine. Okay, so we want to call this some type of resolve.
So I would call it, like request resolve.
Resolve request.
That works for me. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay. Anytime we create a shared thing in our spec, I would always make sure we clean it up properly. So I would start with the after each. We should probably just null it out so that we don't potentially run into an issue where we're resolving something that doesn't exist anymore.
Well, there it is. I couldn't remember.
Yep. Awesome. So now on our callback, mock on post, what I am fairly certain what we want to do here. Yeah, let's do it like this. What we want to do is on our second parameter, we want to do open parentheses, close parentheses, do a new arrow function that returns a new promise. Yep. And then open parentheses and resolve.
Are we good? No, we don't need the reject, so you just want to call the resolve. This is a callback function, right?
Yeah. Yep. And then we're going to save that reference to resolve off in our shared variable. We created that resolve request thing.
We're going to save it. You want to assign it to the actual resolve?
Yeah, so we're going to do resolve request equals resolve. Yeah. Yeah, how you feeling, Peyton?
A little confused.
Okay.
Not much, but so usually the second parameter on this mock on post, if I remember the API, we put in the path to the post for the API, and the second parameter is typically the payload you send up, correct? Is that wrong?
The second parameter is going to be the callback function, or wait. Oh, you're right. I'm messing something up. You're right. It's not the second parameter. We do mock on post, close parentheses, and then we do dot reply. And we're going to pass this whole arrow function thing to the dot reply. You're right. So we're going to do mock. Yep. Dot reply. Yes. Great observation. Awesome.
And then we
don't need anything there. I'm fine. We can just,
Okay. So every time this is going to reply with a promise, and then we're going to call it when we want to resolve it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
or call that variable. It's going to be an actual promise, right? So
Yep.
we'll be able to say resolve request dot resolve, and then boom.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
I'm following.
Yeah, that's all we need to do. We'll actually just call resolve request. And if we wanted to reject it, like we could figure out a way to save both of those out in a nice way, but let's just keep it simple for right now.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we can just call since we're actually assigning resolve to that. That's okay.
Yeah, so let's keep going. We should now not have our failure anymore.
Yeah, because we mocked it out, didn't we? I missed it. There we go. Cool.
Yeah, sweet. Great. So that thing should be existing now. That's great. We should be loading now. Like we should have made our request. So it'd be great for us now to assert that we did make our request. I'm trying to think of
Correct payload, but
yeah, there's a number of different ways we could do that to get the payload that we made the request with. One way is to look at you can get like there's like a history prop that mock Axios adapter keeps track of, and we can see the history of all the requests we made. We might like doing it that way. Another way is to create a jest spy for our request, and then just say, hey, was my request called with these parameters? Which way do you like?
I've always used just that spy on.
Okay, then let's do that. It's going to be
But I mean, I would like to try it the other way since I've never done it.
Okay, let's do that then.
Okay.
So now the thing we want to assert is that we made the right request. So we want to say it calls
endpoint with correct payload.
That sounds incredibly descriptive and helpful to me. Yes. And I'm not being sarcastic.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure while we're here, let's just console log mock.history. Like that's where it's stored somewhere.
Is it a function or just a property?
It's a prop on it. Yeah. If you go down, there we go. Yep, on that post. Yep.
No kidding. That's a lot cooler.
So another.
Okay.
Yep. Sweet. So the downside though with this is you see how it's organized. It captures every post. So like even if I post like, since we only have one endpoint, that's fine. But if we were hitting multiple endpoints, like how do I know that this was the data for that?
Yeah, you probably have to have some type of helper function to like cycle through the array to.
Right. And so I'm fine either way. And you also notice it's like JSON serialized. And so sometimes like we still have to like parse through that JSON out.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the shared runners enabled is JSON because okay.
But this is a totally fine approach. I would suggest, right now we're kind of talking about how do we hit the same thing two different ways. Let's just create another helper for this and say like, find request payload. And we can figure out the way to do it there. Or maybe like a get request payload because you're not necessarily finding it in the DOM. However you want to do it. I don't know.
That sounds good. So we're going to pass in the mock here.
We don't need to pass anything in because we have access to everything's in scope for us already. Great. So we can do the mock dot history dot
binder for
post.
Oh. So okay. What I'm thinking was we're gonna have to like actually call a find method on this post array. Or are we? Or are we just, since it's only one object within the array, we're just gonna index it and that's it?
I'd say let's just index it and that's it.
Okay.
Since we have this in its own function, like it's kind of nice. Yep. dot data, and let's JSON dot parse. That data is probably a safe bet too.
The entire thing.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Cool. So expect the GET request payload.
So since it's not actually a primitive value.
Yep. Yeah, those are really long.
Yeah, super long things. You typically like to, sorry, I've been asking a lot of questions, but you typically like to store like what you're expecting with like something long like this and a constant at the top, or just do it straight into equal?
That's a really good question. I would do it just in line to here in this case.
Yes, it's such a small test, and we probably only need to access it once. I guess if you start accessing it more than once, you probably want to move it into a variable.
Yeah, if I was really concerned, if I was concerned about like, okay, I want to capture what it is, but I also really want it to be this, make sure it's the same under these different specs, I would consider moving it to another variable. But this is like just super readable, because you can also, looking at docs or looking at tests, also like a documentation of its behavior. Like this is still really readable of when something happens, what do I expect?
Why have I never heard of this history?
Mock.history?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew history existed in Axios, but I don't know why I didn't think about I could use it to test like endpoint data, or like a post response or get.
Yeah, it could be nice. And you brought up a really good point of making a helper utility. That makes sense. I feel like we're so close now.
It's been fun. It's good learning. So we know now. We know we're posting the right bit of data when we click on this toggle.
Yep. Another thing though too that we want to confirm is that the toggles are disabled, because that's something we do when we're loading as well. So right now we're in our special loading state that we want to make sure we show the loading icon, and that both our toggles are disabled. So I would have.
True.
I would have one other for something like toggles are disabled, and let's just check both on that one.
That's true. Also, I did think of one thing just now, like when I was doing some manual testing around this feature was, I think when the first toggle is clicked, that actually the payload only includes this bit of data.
When the first toggle is clicked.
Yeah.
Yes, that is one thing we're gonna need to check. You're right. We're gonna need to check when we enable it from the other way. We need to, and we can actually copy this. We can copy this around a lot, so we can double. Sorry, I'm tripping over myself.
You're fine.
We'll get to that, and I think we'll be able to write that test really easy. And that's one thing cool when we start creating helpers for these things, even though we haven't duplicated ourselves, but just for readability, it helps us add more specs really easy.
That's what I'm kind of thinking is, as this feature grows or anything, like go ahead and do the groundwork of getting the helpers up there, so when other engineers come in, they can hit the ground like really running.
No, I'm that's a really good point. Cool. Yeah, let's finish up the spec we were doing there. So I think it's gonna be.
They're not disabled. We need to check the props. My bad.
Well, it's kind of it's kind of the same thing. I think it's a prop. Yeah, if you go ahead and paste the expectation you just copied, and change from exists to props.
I got you.
Yeah. Now things get really wonky. Something we haven't thankfully run into here, and it's probably because we're dealing with toggle. things get really wonky when it's not actually a prop and it's an attribute that we like pass along to a bootstrap component. Thankfully, we haven't had to mess with that. Beautiful. All right. And then we want to make sure we show the loading as well. Yeah.
I've gotten to where I just like name stuff. I used to spend a lot of time, you know, thinking about naming.
Oh, yeah.
I even saw on Twitter the other day, someone asked, if you were building a component, blah, 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 like, and like gave like an example of the component, what would you name it? And I was like, just name it something. Get it going.
I still enjoy it, but I don't do it as much anymore now that I think I've matured a little bit as a developer. When I first started, I used to like just come up with just really weird names. So when React was first coming out, we were kind of thinking of doing single page apps. Our 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 company, we were like built our own single page app library.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really pushing for it, and I called it Spage for single page.
Ooh,
Um, that
fancy.
was, yeah. So that kind of like really weird esoteric naming, I'm such a huge fan of. Like the Gulp library. Do you remember using Gulp?
Oh, yes, yes. And
Uh,
Bauer was the other one, or
yeah,
Golden Bauer.
I like all those creative names for it, but I realized like those actually aren't very helpful. Like they're fun, but sometimes it's not helpful.
Okay, I
Um,
ran into something. Let's see. Find loading icon. Why did we have to call element on that again?
Yeah, you're asking a really good question. So the to be visible matcher, that special matcher,
It's only for not.
well, no, it should work that way.
Oh,
But I wonder if maybe it's not visible. Uh, let's console log the element, um,
or
and
is
maybe our
this,
matcher isn't doing what we really think it's doing. Um,
do you ever do this for this case?
oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, let's do that.
She's there. Well, v show inline true label loading.
This does not have the display none. Um, and so that means this is doing what we expect it to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest doing it this way. Shows loading icon. Let's console log. Let's check another console log. Can we do find loading icon? Dot uh,
Attributes.
element
Oh,
dot style dot display. Yeah. It's just gonna be empty. Yep. Um, so I think we want to expect that this display is empty. Um, and then we need to change our other, and I would suggest making a helper for this of we have find loading icon, but let's do like, you know, is loading icon visible? And I think it's
it's
actually gonna be an empty string. Yeah.
then what is this spit out? I can't remember.
Yeah, I would suggest element dot style dot display. I think it's going to be none, and that's what we want to make our helper check. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay,
So
so it's actually checking the style property there. I see.
yep. So
All right.
I would suggest adding another helper for I would call it has visible loading icon, or is loading maybe.
Yeah, for some reason I was thinking something like around visibility, yeah, shooting blanks.
So we could, yeah.
Being icon visible.
That works for me. That's great. That was I think that was a great way to word it.
Okay. And then we just kind of want to pass in and check the prop.
I would do it.
String or none, maybe.
Sometimes I put these expects and I sometimes I'll group expects into a helper. In this case, I don't think we need to. Like I'll do that as like a last resort. What I think we should do is what we're console logging down there on line 60. Yeah, let's just copy all that, paste it into there. And here we'll say it's visible if it is not equal to none. So we'll do space not.
Yeah, so we're just going to return a Boolean here.
Yep. Yep. So not, yep.
Sorry. If I'm ever being recorded, I have fat thumb and like brain dead.
Yeah, no, you're good. So now, yeah, these are going to be just super, super readable of do we expect it to be visible, true or false. But our matcher to be visible sounds like it needs some work. So we expect it not to be visible, so this will be false.
I'm sorry, I was trying to listen to the thing you said before just a second ago. Something about what matcher?
So this matcher, the to be visible matcher, that's something that we kind of inherited from the Jasmine jQuery package that we're still using. But then I think we tried to like, and by we I mean myself, tried to make it smarter, but clearly it's still not smart. Yeah.
I got you. Sorry.
No, you're good. Beautiful. Beautiful. Awesome. Oh yeah, we've got I
did.
Cool.
Cool.
So so now we just want to then double check if I resolve the request. So that's kind of another inside of there after we've enabled this toggle change. This is going to be a whole nother context, I think, too.
Oh, okay.
So I think we would do a describe. I think we could do it in here, or if you want to do it, we could do. It's totally up to you if you want to do it in here, or
what are we checking?
Do it outside of it.
What are we checking on the component now?
Well, we want to double check after we resolve the request. Are we back to where they're not disabled anymore? And yeah, we want to check, are they not disabled anymore? And if we rejected it, did we show that flash error? That would be one of the things to capture as well here.
Yeah, that sounds like a new context to me.
Let's do it.
We probably can name this something along the lines of, oh, made a comma there. I don't know. I'm just going to put that there until you help me think of something better.
Yeah, so I usually, like, for all of these contexts, I usually preface it with. So I say, like, with this context, it does these things with whatever. So I would say, like, with, you know, with response. And that's fine. I would say, like, with, I don't put a whole lot of thought into naming.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So the before each is going to be really similar. Um, yep, we create the component and we do the toggle.
Can't remember what we named that.
Yep.
I think I just pasted that twice somewhere. Okay.
But now we actually do our resolve.
Yeah, which we called that request, resolve request.
Yeah, I don't think we have to pass anything to it. Let's try not passing anything to it and see what happens. And I would expect this to no longer be disabled. So over in our toggles are disabled thing on line 90 and stuff.
Oh, right. Well, after the request is resolved, we want to check the loading icon's gone and everything's back to true false.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. We might need to do a next tick after we've resolved our request on line after 103.
Oh, go ahead and return it.
Yeah.
Just like that.
I think it needs parentheses. I think you call next tick. Oh, what's your problem? Maybe.
I think that's it. But, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we're getting an error above that error. If we scroll up, do we get anything else problematic? Resolve request is not a function. No, you're not a function. It does not like it that we did it that way. Probably maybe because we gotta like wait for promises or something.
I'm curious. I wonder if I can. Well, I can't console log that out if it's going to fail already.
Yeah, I'm guessing that we haven't actually triggered that yet.
Yeah, it's null.
Yeah, go ahead and on line 41, can we add a console log right above line 41? And just something like let's call it, let's have a string or something like promise hit or something like that. Exactly. Can we run just the function that's failing on line 1010? That console log is helpful. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you see, it's not hit yet.
Got to wait for it. Oh, my chair just sunk down.
How do we want to do that? I think that's going to be a next tick thing. So let's go ahead and make this before each. Let's make it an async. We can make it, if we go on line 101, we can make this an async.
Oh, I never do this syntax.
Oh, it just goes right before our arrow function.
Oh, okay. I always do the dot then.
Yeah.
So we await down here, or
right before console log resolve request. So right before 104, let's await. We'll do await wrapper dot VM dot next tick.
Oh.
Yeah. I guess maybe we need to actually do like a wait for promises. Yeah, let's check that out.
Could it not be returning correctly, like so, like when we return the next tick. Oh, never mind. I answered my own question.
No, you know what? I think I'm doing this. I'm overcomplicating this. And I'm for that. I apologize.
Oh no, you're fine. I'm not. I'm like going through different routes of doing things.
That was a really nice way to put it, Peyton. Peyton, I got us completely lost out here. It's like, oh no, I don't mind the scenic route.
Yeah, it's totally cool.
Um,
I was just thinking differently. So pretty much, I guess what we got going on is once we make this call here,
yeah.
the API, the toggles are still disabled.
Right? What's happening is I'm recreating the wheel of mock Axios adapter already lets us mock the response. So maybe we need to not try to add our own mocking thing around it, and let's just embrace that. So I would say let's get rid of resolve request. And I would say, yeah, let's just, yep, just like that. But then in my different context that needs something special, we will replace it with something. So like in my context where I don't want this to resolve, let's replace it. Let's do mock on post again, but with that forever promise that never resolves.
So just like override it.
Yep. Yeah. So on line 37, and it's really easy to do. So on line 37, I would copy that line.
Don't we need to reply like 200 or something here, or we just leave it like it is? Or like, are we going to take this out of the main?
No, I think you can keep it. You may need to do reply 200. I'm not entirely sure. You may not even need reply.
Okay, yeah, I'm not entirely sure either.
Yeah, this API, I always forget about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But on line 37, I would copy line 37 over to our next context where we actually click the thing. If you go up to where we're doing the loading icon and stuff, yeah. Or down. Yeah, there we go.
Here.
So right before we create the component, this is when I would do it. Yeah. But this time we're going to do our function that returns a promise that never resolves. So instead of 200, we do an arrow function. Yep. And so we're just going to do new, we don't need curlies. We'll just do new promise. And we pass in an empty arrow function inside there. Pretty sure you need to pass in a function, so we'll just make it an empty arrow function. Yep. I think that'll do it. We're still just focusing on that one. So then on that one, we don't need to do anything like that because we're already doing the default where we respond happily.
So we can get rid of this async?
Yeah, and return the next tick now in line 98. All right, I know I'm getting the mock Axios adapter API wrong. Let me see this. On post.
Yeah, what I always do is go mock on post and like, what was this again? So on post.
Yeah, it looks like that's the right way to do it.
100. You reply with errors. Yeah, you just do a. Yeah, no, we're doing it right. I guess I'm just confused on the why we reply with a new promise that.
So that all of that should work, I think now. Let's go ahead and double check that. If we get rid of our describe.
Our describe.
Or our fit. I mean on line 101, if we get rid of our course there. Yeah, so all of those things, those original ones should still be working. This one doesn't seem to be working.
We don't have a mock. Do we need a mock in that one since it's in a different?
Well, I thought we did it at the top, right?
Oh yeah, the very, very top level. Yeah.
So I thought we should be fine.
Yeah, you're right.
Can we go check out the shared runners form view component real fast?
Mm-hmm.
Where we actually make our request. Do we do anything with the response data? No, we don't.
Mm-mm.
Is it possible that we're erroring out? Because you notice like we never do is loading false if we error. Can we console log and see if there's an error happening?
Within the then statement or with that
let's do it. Yeah, right there. No, so we're not erroring out. I guess we're just not waiting long enough. So let's try this out. If we go down before we do next tick, I would suggest let's go ahead and make this an async callback function because I think we're gonna have to do another wait. Yeah, I think we want to do yep, and before the next tick, I think we want to do a wait on line 99. I think we want to do a wait Axios dot wait for all.
At the syntax?
Yep. And that's a special helper that we've added just for our testing environment, which should wait for all requests. And it seems to be waiting for a long time for all requests. What's your beef? Async callback was not in, so why is it taking so long? It should have been, I shouldn't have waited that long. All right, let's go to import wait for promises and see if that does it. I'm not.
I can't remember where it's from.
I think it's in helpers /
Yeah, it is.
Oh man, that looks like a fun one. Okay. And if this doesn't work, I have one more thing we could do. Woohoo! For whatever reason.
Do we need this next thing?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So here's the scary thing. Like, have you seen what wait for promises actually is?
I've used it a ton, but never looked at the implementation.
Yeah. If you dive into it, it's like it just calls like request animation frame or something. So it's like it's not deterministic.
Timeout or something.
It's not deterministic, which is a little scary. But maybe it's kind of deterministic.
So what I'm hearing here is you don't like to use it unless you got to.
You are 100% accurate. Yes, we should try not to use it. Another approach is this. Go to our component, our shared runners form view component. What we could do is actually emit an event from here, like on a finally or something. And just like we kind of have test IDs, these are kind of like test events that help us know, okay, I can now start asserting things because we've finished whatever processing we're trying to do.
Interesting.
But that's another thing I would do as a last resort. So
do we have anything like that implemented anywhere?
We've done it a couple times because it's come up where wait for promises was flaky. And so the way to deterministically wait for something we expect is to have a semantic event. And that's when I would recommend doing it.
So like a dot finally, and then like you emit a view event.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'll have to do a grep of the code base and look at that later.
Yeah. Okay, but it looks like we're good. Yeah. The other thing would be we want to describe when we have an error. Like, so there's describe with response. Let's describe with an error. And so that one would be just like before where we did our like forever mock. Yeah, we want to reply with like a 500, I guess.
We don't need an async anymore, right?
Maybe we do. Maybe we do. Yeah. And so what we want to check is if flash was called. So I think we want to go up and we want to do just.mock.
That, don't we?
Yeah. I think we want to import flash.
Let's create flash, right?
Yeah, we can copy it from our component too.
Oh, yeah, true that. Already got it open.
Yep. But then we want to mock flash because we don't actually want to run it. We just want to double check that was called.
Is that a just mock?
Yep, just.mock. And then we pass in the path. Yep. Yeah, and so I would, yep. I don't know what's going to be called with, so let's just pass in something and then see what it would have been. It'd be nice to also capture the message. So let's.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, since don't we throw a message in the catch?
Yeah, I think we have something like that. But it looks like we can also get something from like our response. So I think we could do both with the parameterized spec. Let's do that in a second. But let's just double check here what. Yeah. Cool. And instead of to have been called, let's do to have been called with, and then whatever our error is, let's see what.
You want to pass in an error here, or like check for this one?
No, I'm actually talking about looking at the terminal to seeing what and fixing whatever the terminal says is wrong.
Ah, gotcha. What?
I think it's because we didn't do the wait for promises thing.
Oh.
And it's also because we want to do the mock on post before we create component. So anytime we're doing these collaborator stuff, it's not called because we haven't, our line 118 needs to actually be before we create the component. Yeah, great.
So you want to mock it before, yeah.
Yep, and then that message, let's just pass it in. Great. I think there's a period at the end of it, maybe. Yeah, there's a period at the end of it.
There it is, there it is.
Yeah, great. Request failed with status code 500. What's wrong with you? Yeah, of course it failed.
We told it to.
Is it because we're throwing the error afterwards?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering earlier. Remember?
I guess you're right. Okay, that's fine. It's nice sometimes seeing those errors.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe it's nice. Maybe we should console log it, console error the error, but whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you go back to our component, you see there's actually a condition here. If our error has response data error, we use that as the message. Otherwise, we use this as the message.
Mm-hmm.
So what's a good way of doing that? I would say, hey, this is perfect case for doing a parameterized spec. And so what I would do if we go there, I would change that describe to a describe.each. Yep, and then open, but then on the .each, you're going to do open backtick, close backtick.
I have never done what the describe.
Oh, we are about to do it. It's just right after each other. Before you call the each, you do this string thing. Yeah. So this is like a, what do they call it? I think they call it like a template string function thing. It's really cool. So do enter. We're gonna create a new line. Yep, create a new line. All right, and then inside of there, what are our parameters going to be? We're going to have our error object.
So I have seen these before, but I have not used them. So the syntax is like, don't you use pipes here?
Yep. So you're going to create a table of the parameters. So the first thing is the header of the table.
Okay.
So we're going to call the first column error object or obj or whatever.
So it's actually like a variable?
It's a variable, yep.
Okay.
And then space pipe. And then this next parameter is going to be on that message on line 126. So I would just call it message, maybe. Cool, great.
Okay, so just two use cases, either the error object or the message.
So there's two parameters to this spec. And so the first one is where if error object is empty, and this error object is going to be what we send to line 116. That's what that condition is based off of do we have an error object or not? And that's going to change our message. So usually when you have a parameterized spec, you're going to have like, here's a list of inputs, and then these are outputs, and then you just have a table of inputs and outputs. And here, our first column is the inputs, and the second column is our output of what we expect it to be. So you could use that language, and I usually do that where I'll say like expected message, because so everything, here's all of my inputs, and then this is what I expect my values to be. And so what's really cool is then you just look in one table, here's the behavior of my component, given these inputs, these are the outputs. And it'll make more sense as we start diving into it. For now, let's just call it this because it seems terse and might be nice. The one weird thing with this whole syntax. So now every new line is going to be a new entry of parameters. So let's create a new line here. And for each value, you're going to get an actual JavaScript value by using the template interpolation curly thing. So you're going to do like $curly.
I got you.
Yeah. And so the first one's going to be empty. So we'll just do curlies. Just empty. Is this going to be an empty object? So inside the $curly, we're going to do. Yep. And then go ahead and get out of it, pipe. And the message is going to be line. We're going to do $curly again. And then it's going to be line 127, that message. Sweet.
Okay, so now I'm seeing like, so this is just error object for the first use case is going to be an empty object.
Yep.
And that's what will push us over to this message.
Yep. So let's go ahead and glue it together before we add our new case.
Okay.
So on line 115, what I like to do is to fix the typo with error where we have 3 R's. On line 115, there's 3 R's on error.
Sorry, my mind was...
you're good.
I thought you said 3 args, like...
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
But then for these parameterized specs, I usually include the input as part of the name. So what I'll do is after with error, I'll do space and then $error obj. and it's going to inject. It doesn't need curlies. I don't think it'll work with curlies because we're technically inside of like jest. This is how they like template their descriptions or whatever. So it's going to be just error obj, the name of our first parameter. Or yeah. Great. So then
You don't
this.
have this in template literals or anything?
So
that spits out just like that?
yeah, it's going to work like this. If you do an actual like backtick literal string here, error obj isn't in scope. So it's like just evaluates for every parameter, we're going to evaluate a new description. It's kind of and we'll see it in the output too, how it names these things. In the callback function, we actually get an object now, and we're going to destructure that object to error obj and message. Yep, great. So now on line 115, we do 500, comma, here's the error obj.
Pass it in if it's there. Okay.
Yeah, and then on line 127, let's change it with message.
I use this now.
Sweet. Boom. So you see how our empty curlies got interpolated into there.
Oh crap! Now I see what's going on.
So
it's going to cycle through each use case.
Yeah. So now we're going to go through we're going to copy that line.
This line right here?
Yeah, the whole line. Let's copy it.
Okay, make a new use case.
Yep. And so if we go back to the component, what it's actually looking for, it looks like, I guess we want to go to if it has an error prop is what we're interested in. So if I think it's just error.
Throw an error like this.
And let's just call it something like lorem ipsum, whatever.
Huh?
We can put whatever we want in there.
I'm just going to say undefined something.
Okay. And then our message is going to be different now. So let's see. I think we got an error on our terminal. Yeah, cool. And so that's capturing the new message. And that's what we would expect for a second column in that.
Right. Because if this, okay, yeah, so if this resolves true first, we're going to show this. Okay, I'm seeing how this is tying in. Okay. Where'd I go? Okay, so each time this describe each, it cycles through the each statement. So how do you keep them like separated to like test each use case?
So it'll describe each is going to go through each line, which is a group of, which is a set of parameters. So each line you can call a test case, and here's the parameters for each test case. So what we want to do is here on line 115, our message is different. It's not an error occurred while updating configuration, it's undefined error. So we want to update on line 115, the second column for message. Which is, and I think that refresh the page and try again, I think that stays there. I think it's just the second part. Or the first part, I mean. If you get rid of the first sentence. Yeah, and put undefined error.
Like literally within the message?
Yeah, because this is actually, if you go back to our terminal.
Oh, we have an array here? And you join it. Oh, goodness. Okay, I didn't see that. Sorry. Okay.
But you can also like, you can save yourself some brain power by just letting the terminal tell you what to do. If you go back to our, yeah, exactly like that. But yeah, so there you go. So we've got those two cases tested. Great. Yeah, that's great. And so now there's only one last thing for us to test, and I think we're completely done. It only took maybe an hour and a half.
That's cool.
Um,
This is the first time I've ever used to describe each, so it was kind of painful for me to understand at first.
yeah, is it kind of making sense now? And it could be really helpful when you get lots and lots of parameters. Does that
Yeah,
make,
I think it is. We're checking the same use case of, so we're passing in the error object and we're checking the same message each time, but each time to describe each comes through is parameterized, so it has different use cases of what we're checking. So yeah, I'm getting it
yeah.
now.
Some of
I
my
get,
favorite some of my favorite examples of this is like when you're testing pure pure functions. Let's jump to let me see where this thing is defined as another example for uh, using the each.
mhm.
Let me see, what is it? Do we have our utils? Do we have path utils or URL utility spec? Yeah. I think this is it. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Is this it? Yes. Okay. Go to URL utility spec. Yeah, and then do a file search for join paths. So here's a good example of like we have one pure function, and what we're doing here on line 520 to 535 is defining our different test cases. So given these inputs, what do we expect the output to be?
So yeah, that function does one thing, so it's gonna have several different inputs, and this is what we expect for all those inputs.
Yeah. Um, and it's a super like using each is a super flexible tool. You can obviously like parameterize things in a way that just makes it more confusing. Um, but for some cases, if you can end up getting it very readable, seeing one list of input output is super helpful.
Yeah, yeah, especially for that function.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I think we're about to do it again. Uh,
Oh, we are.
I think so, because there's one other bit that we haven't tested yet. Um, and one way to tell, is our test good enough or not? If we go to our component and if we go up to update payload, if we got rid of line 46 to like the beginning of 48,
Mhm.
our test would still pass. And if we also got rid of line 41, the parent allow override, our test would still pass because we're not testing those conditions yet. And then we should be 100% ready to go.
This is
Um,
true.
but I think we can do 46 through 48 really quickly by parameterizing what we already have there. So if we go back to shared runners form spec, so check this out. Let's go back up to where we do like the loading checks and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, keep going up where we do get request payload. Uh, let's do a describe each here. Um, yeah.
So subscribe each the ticks.
Yep. And so our inputs are going to be the props to our component because based on our different state that we're in, like I may want to be enabled or not enabled. And then the toggle button that we're going to end up changing on line 76. Um, and then that's based on those, what we would expect to be different would be
The payload, right?
the payload. Yeah, so expected payload is going to be part of it.
So okay, so we need to check the two equal part of that. that what you mean? Okay.
Yep. So let's just do, let's just abstract what we have right now. Currently, our props object is empty. We're not overriding any props.
I think I'm seeing what's going on here. So now, like, so this is empty. And then the toggle button would be the enable toggle.
Yeah, and it's actually just going to be just the function. So to emphasize that this is a function, I would call this something like toggle fn or whatever, because it's going to be the function that finds it, because we haven't created the thing yet. But we're going to pass find enabled toggle specifically to this one.
Okay, good. That's what I was thinking, but then I got confused. I was like,
no, and I was being confusing. So
okay, right. So we're going to pass the function definition or the call? Probably
it's not the call, because the component's not created yet. So that's what I was trying to say is we're not going to pass the call. It's actually just a reference to the function. Yep. Yep.
Expected payload is
funky payload. Yeah.
Okay.
Glorious, but it can't be multiple lines. That's one downside.
Oops.
Yeah. Okay.
So then.
So another.
Where do you destructure this at again? It's in the for each.
On line 72, the callback we pass this each thing is where we would do the object destructuring. Yep.
So you get the props, then you get the toggle button, expected payload, right?
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
And then there's a C on expected payload. Yep. So in line 77, so now let's replace our specific values with the parameters. We're going to call toggle button. And what I was saying earlier is this is a function. So I usually like to throw in like fn or something to signify.
Oh, like on the name of the prop.
Yeah, however you want to do it. It's kind of fine how it is right now.
Oh, okay.
It's up to you.
No, that sounds good.
Okay. And then there's our payload.
Yeah, we're gonna need to do expected payload here. I'm moving a little better now. I'm understanding.
And then props needs to go to our create component.
Yeah, but we have to refactor that, right?
You're right. Yep. And so let's go up and do that.
Where is it? Okay, so we're gonna have props, and it's an object. Do we need to have a default props thing here?
So I would just leave what we have. I would default this first argument to an empty object.
Okay.
You might need to wrap it back in parentheses. And then let's just spread it. Cool.
Okay. All right, so then, yep, that'll be that.
Yeah, and so it should actually all be working now. Yep, it's still working. So now let's add another case.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So the other case is
you have to change the props for like
init enabled is false.
Yep, that's right. So then we just say init enabled false.
Yes.
And then like for this, yeah. Toggle button should be we want to still click this one, right?
I would say so, yeah. But now actually, what you're doing is actually you're doing something like combinatorial testing now, where I have these two different values. Let me make sure I test all the different combinations and permutations of these arguments. And so that's one way of looking at it, is like, you're right, with this prop false, let's test when the toggle button I hit is fine enabled, but let's also test it when the override button as well. And then you want to do it for each one of these different permutations of values. that's one thing that I really like about this format that jumps out at you is like, okay, have I tested all my combinations?
Yeah, that's super helpful because like I'm trying to visualize like this implementation right now. Like, so if it's init enabled false, like this is the state we'll be in. So,
Yep.
and then we want to check that state. And ooh, it looks like we have something weird going on here.
I'm guessing the GDK kind of blew up.
Yeah, GDK is dead. That's okay. Okay, so if init enabled is false, our toggle's going to be that way. So we're
the enabled one, yeah, but our payload is going to be way different, and it's really important that we capture this because apparently the background blows up if we send it something.
Yeah.
If we send it the prop it doesn't expect.
Yeah, that's where I'm wishing my GDK wasn't blown up right now so I could check those. Hopefully I can just refresh unless you remember them off the top of your head.
Well, it's already there because I think it's already there. If we go back to it on our first parameter, I think we can just copy it from it. The shared runners enabled, that's the one that we're changing. The other one should not exist in the payload at all.
Yeah, that's what I was curious of is like, does that exist or it doesn't? That's what I didn't know if you knew.
Yeah, the other one should not. It should just be the first one.
So we're just going to say true here, right?
Yep. But then the other one should be gone.
Yep. That's what I was curious about.
Yeah. Let's check it out. Okay, yes. All right. And we revealed something that is interesting about our parameter spec here. Clearly, the override toggle doesn't exist when I'm going the other way. That's another part of our, do you remember? So I would, the way I would handle this, there's two ways we can handle it. One is just remove the override toggle checking here. The other way to handle it would be to go add another property to our parameter list. Add another parameter to our parameter list of like has override toggle. So I'd suggest doing that because that might be the least amount of work for us right now.
Yeah.
Yep. And so the first one is going to be true. And yeah, you got to do the dollar thing because that's how you get the actual JavaScript value. Yep. And then the other one's going to be false. Yep. And then let's make sure we capture it in our destructuring on 74.
Yep. Third, right.
Great.
Okay, so this should still be failing, right? Because we need to.
Yep. So what I would do.
We have to pass this in.
Yeah. What you can do is wrap all of 84 in an if.
Oh yeah, to only run this
yep.
expectation if it's existed. Yeah. Okay.
That might be just the simplest way to do it. Another way of doing it would be like, okay, if it doesn't exist, let's assert that it doesn't exist. Like that's probably the better way. But for right now, let's just keep going.
I can go back and like once my brain has time to.
Yeah, I know we've been at this for a little bit. On line 96, we'll need a similar if wrapping it as well.
Can you do an if within this it?
Sure. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. The other approach would be like we've parameterized too much. Like we're really interested in just the payload bit. Maybe we need to pull that into its own parameterized thing. So we're not running these other specs.
That's true.
That's the other approach.
Like have one just literally for like the payload, and that's it. Like
yeah, and then have another one that's not parameterized that makes sure the toggle gets shown and hidden and stuff.
yeah,
But I think
before I'm gonna go ahead and push the test up or whatever, but I may just like run back through it one time and see like
yeah,
a good way to like make it better, since I should have a day to kind of look at this.
Yeah, that's a great call. I think did the test pass?
Yeah.
Sweet. Oh, but the one thing, if you go back to it, you notice it grouped everything into that one describe because we haven't distinguished between the describes.
Yeah, so that's where you come in and do your little, typically name it. Is that what you mean?
Yep. Another way of doing it too is you can add a parameter called, and sometimes I'll do this, I'll add a parameter called desk, and this is my description that I'm going to inject into here.
And you put it like a parameter this way, and then you put the parameter up here.
Yeah, I usually do it at the first, as the first column of like, here's the description of it. In this case though, I think I would just say, I would say with toggle change and let's do $props.
Yeah, to see what the props were that were passed in. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing though is it would be really cool to
so typically check. You do this right here.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes and we might actually end up doing that because technically we've hard coded enabled there, but that's actually based on a prop. So I wonder what happens if we actually put the what if we replace enabled on line 75 with toggle button FN? What does that look like? Do you think it will keep the name of it?
I don't know.
I hope it does. If it doesn't, I'd be a little disappointed. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, well,
it rocks. That's great. Because the other thing I was really hoping to test too is if we go back to line 72, it'd be great to do that case all over again, but with the other toggle. It'd be great to do this initial case with
the override toggle.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's what I mean. Oh, wait, I think I'm talking about if it's enabled as false, and then we do the override toggle. I think that's what I mean.
Yeah, I copied the wrong one, didn't I?
I described the wrong one, so.
I see what you mean.
It was my fault.
Oh, no.
Sweet. Yeah, and that's going to change our payload. That's going to be false still.
And then we should have that other prop, right?
This one should be false now. Yeah.
You've got a good memory on how that API works.
Woohoo. All right.
Say we're at a good stopping point.
Yeah, the only, and if we were willing to put this 100%, yes, we should stop. The final missing piece is we haven't tested the component under the parent has not allowed override prop.
Mm-hmm. I can test it.
That's going to be just its own describe, and there's no parameterization there, so that should be really straightforward. But then then all of this is good and it's ready to go. I think we just then want to do some manual testing of it.
Yeah.
So if you want to push it up, and you can ask me to do a quick look over, then we can pass it to another maintainer that wasn't as involved in it per our handbook. And
yeah, totally.
And then we should be good to go. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the refactor was pretty easy, not bad.
Very cool.
Hey man, it was fun.
Yeah, thanks for letting me rant so much about testing. And I did take advantage of this opportunity because I I think walking through that path of testing a component from scratch can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I learned a good bit, and hopefully I wasn't too out of it.
Oh no, you were 100% not out of it. So awesome. Hey, I'll catch you later, man.
All right,
Thanks.
man. See you. Bye.
Bye.